Okay, I would like to go get into another topic today, and thank you all for visiting this lovely video that I'm about to do for you. It's something that I find a lot of people in general seem to experience. Kind of another conceptual video similar to the last one that we did on consistency, but it's a big one and you hear it a lot. It's a buzzword in this industry. It's paralysis analysis. And you might be sitting home nodding your head and realizing, hey, I've been doing education and thinking about my first deal for the past 10 decades. I'm ready to go at some point, and realize you're trying to find a way to push to the next level. And I want to explain to you why paralysis analysis happens, and maybe I can help you get through that and kind of shift your mind as to what is needed. So I'm just going to call it PA. Because I don't like paralysis analysis, especially running a business, being an owner. It's not something that is good. It's really not. You tend to find if you're a more analytical person, you might get stuck in a position where you're overthinking things. On the flip side of it, though, you have people that like to be very improvisational with their decisions, and that's not actually good either. But there is a happy medium, there is a balance, and there are reasons and ways to look at things to help yourself push past paralysis analysis. So, and we've all experienced it to some shape or form, and here's the reason. The reason being is we've been trained to do this. We've been trained from the moment we stepped into school at a very young age to be students for life. We sit there, we analyze. We get comfortable for the first 20 years of our lives in school studying and then performing on a test and studying, and we think the answer to all of our problems is you study harder, you're going to get better at what you do. And in reality of that is not the case in the real world. So there's a couple things you need to consider, is that you've been pre-programmed for this from a very young age, and we accept that. That is what it is, and getting out of that mindset is incredibly important. So you need to realize that taking steps forward in real estate or anywhere else in life happen or don't happen, better yet, because many people are afraid of one big thing, whether they want to admit it or not, and that's failure. Okay? People are afraid to fail, and here's the magical thing about failure and paralysis analysis. You can't be afraid to fail, or what I like to call experiment. Okay? We can go to the Thomas Edison example where he had 10,000 filaments he tried before he got the right one, and people ask him, well, all those failures, how did you stay with it? And his answer was, those weren't failures, those were experiments. I learned 10,000 ways to not build a light bulb. And the same thing happens in real estate when you're learning as you go and you're trying to figure things out, but nothing happens if you continue to just study and not do it. Going back to the concept that we discussed with consistency, you just have an idea, you might be really knowledgeable at the idea, but you don't have anything until you do something. So you have to take action and you have to move forward to get out of the paralysis analysis, and don't look at your things as a failure so much, or that word that comes along with it, because nobody likes it. Everybody's afraid to fail. Everybody's afraid that it's a personal reflection on who they are. And the reality is just, it's an experiment, and if it doesn't work, you learn one more way to not do something, which means one more way to be closer to getting towards that goal. So really, you want to think of everything you do as an experiment, and there's going to be a result. It's going to be pass, or it's going to be fail. Every single day running our business, Josh, myself, Jason, Chris, this is what we do. You get better and better because when something doesn't work, you adjust, you move forward, and you go to the next thing. You want to be educated about your decisions, you want to make smart decisions, but the only way to get better at making those decisions is by finding out many times what doesn't work. And you want to hedge your bets, you want to make sure you're investing properly. But you need to know that it's a learning game. The best way to learn in life, at least most people will tell you, is they say, hey, how do you learn best? And a lot of people say, well, I'm a visual learner, I'm an audio learner. But as you grow older and you get in the work world and you start to realize the real answer is I work best, or I learn best by doing. When I'm actually doing it, I get really good at what I'm doing. Well, if you really track what happens during the process of learning, which is really the learning process and execution process, the reality is, whatever the task might be, it could be something from building an Excel spreadsheet to your daily job, to mothering, fathering, whatever you want to call it, you are constantly making adjustments where something doesn't work. You took action, something didn't work, okay, I know not to do it like that, and I'll move forward in my experiment and do it a different way next time. And you keep building on the successes, but you keep experimenting as you go. So let your mind start to shift and think not in terms of study, 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 that's going to get me to where I want to be, so much as make educated guesses, hedge your bets, properly invest in what you're doing, but you have to step forward. You have to go out as a wholesaler. Let's take, for instance, here's a good one. I always get this. I hear this all the time, and I'm not trying to downplay it because everybody can relate to this to some extent. Let's just take wholesaling because a lot of people do it. It's where they start. Okay? I can't tell you how many times I really have a conversation with somebody. You could tell they're a little shy or a little concerned that their biggest concern is, oh my gosh, I've studied so much and I've gotten all this information. I'm ready to do my first deal. And they don't know how to do a contract. They're afraid of a contract. They're afraid that if they go in and maybe their numbers are wrong, it's not going to work. Start thinking to yourself, okay, how am I really going to know whether it's going to work if I don't go in and get my contract? So I have a lot of wholesalers that are still stuck. They might know how to analyze a deal. They might know what they're doing. They get stuck on the contract phase, the easiest phase in the whole thing. They don't know it's easy because they haven't tried it. And let's say they go in and the contract isn't what they wanted and there wasn't some byline item in there and whatever it may be, and you put a $100 deposit on a property and yeah, you might lose that $100. It's an experiment, cost you $100 in education, and that's where it is. And you move forward, and this time maybe there was you were off by 10 grand and there's no room, there's nobody that wants to buy it. Okay, you're going to learn now from that situation that next time you go and do it, you're going to present a proper contract at a proper number and you won't be off by $10,000. So you really just learned how to move forward and you took a step in the right direction in understanding that it wasn't a failure. It was, hey, I had to go out, I had to do it, and this is my result. So the next time you do it, maybe you're only off by 5 grand, okay? All the while learning, all the while getting better at contracts, all the while, you're gonna have a process that when you go into a house, this is what I'm trying to do. You have a process to presenting to maybe a private seller, private buyer, whichever, if you're moving the property on either end. But you have a process that you continually grow on. And a lot of people don't realize, even the people that are stuck in the paralysis analysis phase, they don't realize that they are actually already out of that phase as they make adjustments. They're just not recognizing it. They don't want to recognize it. They're afraid. There's a fear of failure in there. But if they really step back and looked and realize the strides that they make, that the small adjustments that they make, they're already taking action. So it's really important, more so than anything, to shift your mind. Mindset is everything. You cannot be afraid. It doesn't mean be reckless in your investing. It doesn't mean you run out and just start doing things that don't make sense, because you're not going to learn from that either. You want to be able to always take away. If you experiment on something and it doesn't work out, there's nothing worse than not learning, because then we get into what the classical definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different result. Okay, that's what'll happen if you don't learn from your botched experiments. So you can't be afraid of botching an experiment. You have to learn from them moving forward. You have to know what you can and cannot do, and hey, I won't do that again. That didn't make sense. That was a loser, and that's okay. It's not a personal reflection. We all make mistakes. In fact, I would go as far. I'll be openly. I'll give you an open confession on it. I tend to be a person that needs a ton of repetition in what I'm doing, over and over and over. And I get pretty good at what I do, but I might take longer to learn than somebody else that you may know. I would say I'm not naturally gifted at a lot of things. So, but I know that and I recognize that. So I need to be a doer. I'm constantly doing things over and over and over again until I perfect the process, which means, call it what you will, I fail and fail and fail at experiments until I have it right. At this point in the game, I've done that. I've done a pretty good job of getting to where I have to be, and I make good, educated bets. But I'm aware that things may not come just naturally to me like they might somebody else, and I'm not afraid of that. I'm absolutely okay with that. I make smart decisions along the way. I don't bite off more than I can chew, but I build on any failure or something that I need to learn. And so I'm always moving forward because that's my mindset. I'm always taking action. I just, you know, I was actually speaking with somebody that I help in another business that the biggest message I could deliver, because she was stuck in paralysis analysis, and the biggest message I could deliver was, look, you need to move in a direction. You can move 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction, and as long as you're learning from that, you'll start to correct. So I usually look at it like the best way to say it would be, here's your straight line, okay? And if perhaps you're working with myself or Josh as a student, our job, we know that you're going to get off track. We know that there's things that you're not going to be perfect with, because the shortest distance from from here to here is right down the straight line. Well, unless you're absolutely perfect, flawless, and you have some sort of gift that I'm unaware of, or that maybe you're even unaware of, getting there in one shot is probably not going to happen. So you need to anticipate, yeah, sure, you have good ideas, and this is how we grow businesses. You have good ideas, and you start to go down the straight line, and then you go a little bit off base, and you start to go this way. So maybe you're working with Josh, and you have an experiment that you realize you're doing, and Josh can recognize it for you, or myself, I can recognize it for you and say, hey, this is most likely where this experiment leads. So our job is to say, hey, let's get back towards that road. Let's get back towards that straight line, okay? Every now and then, you'll keep plodding along, and maybe you go a little bit too far off because you just saw something new and exciting in real estate. You didn't put as much thought into it. You had some momentum, and we say, hey, whoa, this is pretty far off. Let's get back in line, okay? And eventually, we're gonna wind up here. But you are gonna go off the road. We all go off the road a bit because we think we're pursuing the right path, and then you learn, hard stop, U-turn, let's go back. We learn from these. Each one of these marks was what you would call a failure, what I just call as an experiment, a learning phase. Sometimes the education is expensive. It just depends on what, how much of a off-base decision you make. But you're moving all the time. You're moving towards this direction, no matter how far you go. The problem is if you get stuck in paralysis analysis and that's where your mind is, you're always here. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care what your PhD and whatever is. If you're not doing anything with it, you're stuck here. You're always going to be here. You need to be here. So start thinking of it in this direction. A lot of this, the whole real estate business, people like to make it seem more complicated than it is. Once you know it, it's not. There's no fancy way. There's nothing that you would sit there and say, wow, Ian is so smart because he didn't. No. I'm not any smarter than anybody else out there. I've never thought of myself as being that far advanced, say nobody else can do this. In fact, I look at it the other way. I always say to myself, if one other person did this, why can't I do it? Makes no sense. I don't believe in, and there's savants and people that are maybe more IQ tested, but in general, almost all the population falls within a pretty similar threshold, and then it's a matter of what they do. Because you can easily have somebody with a very high education level stuck here, and a lot of, if you start bumping into some pretty serious landlords in your area or flippers, they'll tell you, they'll just say, I'm not the smartest guy. Is usually the first thing out of their mouth. I'm not the smartest guy, but I know what I'm doing. These guys have just taken a very direct approach. They figured out what they were doing very simply. A lot of them aren't even, a lot of people haven't even graduated high school. Some of the best real estate investors I know did not graduate high school. They just understood how to take action. And I mean, they were all over the board until they learned in their process how to go from A to B, and that's all they do. They don't get fancy with it. They don't go crazy with it. They say, this is what I do. This is what I pay. I know what I'm doing. I know how much I'm going to spend, and that's what I'm going to go for. So it's almost a characteristic trait that supersedes intelligence. Intelligence certainly helps. Don't get me wrong. When you have it, you can probably shorten the curve, but you have to start taking a trip down the road. If you don't start going down the road, you're just never going to get there. You're never going to get there, and as much as I love to educate you and we love to have you on the site, really what gets us motivated to work with you and do what we do here is to see you succeed and take action and complete the deal and complete your goal as to what you were looking for. If your goal is to be continuously educated for the next 10 years in real estate investing and not do a deal, I guess, that's okay too. But really, when other people do transactions and have success, I mean, that's the motivation for what Josh and I do when we work and work on this portion of providing education. It's education with action. It's not just education. So it's a pretty big. You have to differentiate that and understand it in your mind. We're not here to just have you in a seat as a professor that sits on a chalkboard and you feel comfortable in class. You were good in school. I go home, I study, I take a test. No, you've got to take action moving forward in a smart capacity. And if you're working with myself and Josh, again, I'll draw the line. You might go here and we'll get you back here. You might go here and we'll get you back here. But you're constantly moving in this direction with experiments that you learn from. So that was basically all I wanted to cover today, so you had an understanding of what I thought of paralysis analysis, a commonly overused term in this business, and how you can shift your mind to get out of that and really start to move forward in your pursuits of your dreams and your daily things that you really want to accomplish without fear of that personal reflection of what most people would consider failure. But it's really fear that drives paralysis analysis, and if you're in that boat, just recognize it. It's fine. Recognize it, look in the mirror, and decide how you're going to change your position and decide how you're going to change your life.